Wow, so this deserves a much overdue explanation, and I would do this on camera for pure honesty, but I'm reading off of a script because I think this is something that deserves a fair bit of accuracy, so enjoy my wallpaper engine as a background. So let me tell you about what truly happened regarding myself in the last few years, about Chronexia and the Eight Seals, or how we used to call it, Cates. Back in 2016, I got approached by a company called Studio Izune. Are they still about? Operating under a different name, working a different scheme? I don't know. It's been almost a decade, and most of them have ghosted me since. My goal with this video is not to expose people, but to tell you about exactly what happened behind the scene. So for that reason, all the names will be changed for, I don't know, fruits. The head director of Izune, I'm going to call Grape, and the lead art director was a girl I'm going to refer to as Apple. They're the essentials one. Grape didn't do any art stuff. He was the head coordination of Izune and was delegating tasks to their staff. I was dealing with Grape exclusively, and he was in charge of running the art direction. Anyway, starting from the beginning, somehow Grape heard about the fact that I had written a novel called Chronexia and the Eight Seals. It's been a lifelong passion project that I had mentioned on and off on my channel, and they just had finished an animation project which they showed me as their resume. It was as legit as it gets. They offered to turn Cates into an anime. Me, an ambitious up-and-coming anime YouTuber. Of course I was thrilled, but I clearly couldn't finance such a big endeavor on my own, no matter how exciting this was. So I did what every YouTuber do. I pitched the idea to my fans with a janky rough sketch, and thousands of people were on board with the idea, so we were off to the races. We decided to divide the task in two. The studio would make the visual, and I would take care of the audio side. I had some connections, but regardless, we needed money for this to work, so we made a Patreon as a way to crowdfund this, which in hindsight was a terrible mistake. We should have absolutely gone for something like Kickstarter instead. Anyway, to run smoothly, the studio needed about $6,000 a month. Seems like much, but there's about $1,500 for 4 artists spread on the span of a month, doing anything between 60 to 80 hours work a week, clearly underpaid regardless. If we didn't get that much, I would patch the rest from my pocket. If we had more, it would be kept aside for the next month to provide some kind of cushioning. Needless to say, that $6,000 was for the studio alone. I personally invested thousands of dollars from my pocket to take care of my audio side and whatever was lacking. I never made a single penny off of this project. If anything, I've invested a fortune of my own. The first 2 months were smooth sailing. We'd build the structure for the whole thing. We had hundreds of character design to blast through before starting the first frame. I converted the book into an actual script, because you can't just take a book and make it into an anime. They made the storyboarding, I did addition for voice character, and despite the hundreds of submissions I got, I unfortunately had very little to work with in terms of talent. But this was a community project, so we didn't care if it wasn't perfect. We had fun doing it. Thankfully, I actually hit the jackpot with the music side. Everyone who reached out to me had outstanding skills, orchestra level, especially Bill, whom I never had the chance to thank properly. So Bill, if you ever see this, every new piece you made was absolutely phenomenal, and I love them all to bits. We started the work in April, and by July we finally had everything ready to make the trailer that people called the first opening, and we started working on the pilot episode, which was the prologue of the story. So over the next couple of months, we grinded countless hours. I organized the music, the voice acting, the sound effect, the Foley, and they made the visual for the episodes. Little did I know, their teams was already shambling down. Turns out that, unbeknownst to me, out of the monthly 6K, Grape was keeping a really big cut of the money for himself, leaving very little for his crew to work off of. All the while, Grape was telling them I was the bad guy who couldn't afford more this month. Once Grape got a taste of the money, he began asking me for advances for the next months, because his team was threatening to quit, obviously. Meanwhile, the people supporting the Patreon started to get desperate. They kept paying monthly for a project that wasn't getting any releases, so people started to dwindle out, and the gap I had to fill each month just grew more and more, to a point I could hardly keep up with. Not wanting people to think I had scammed them out of a huge sum of money, I just kept pushing for a release that, without a doubt, was getting rushed. Despite all of that, we managed to put out a first episode on Thanksgiving 2016, about 6 months after we started. The reviews were mixed. 80% people were thrilled about the project, but the minority was very loud about the stuff they hated. How some of the minor characters were poorly casted.
Mana? The goddess of energy. She's a goddess. We don't know how she'll react.
My bad. How the narrative was a bit confusing. My bad too, although that was somewhat intentional with the plan of clearing things up as the episodes would have gone on. But the rest was exclusively poking fun at the visuals being, well, truly janky to say the least.
Peasant.
Anyway, the first episode was out and it was smooth sailing from there, right? Not quite. More like the opposite, actually. The Patreon tanked tremendously. The staff under Grape started to quit left and right, but again, that was all smokes and mirror to me. Because I only dealt with Grape, and Grape kept telling me that everything was fine. He gaslit me for 2 years, and every time I would threaten to cut them off, the next week he would come up with a bit of new progress made by Apple, his shining ace in the hole. But I was blinded by redemption. In for a penny, in for a pound. I didn't want episode 1 to be what people remembered me for, so we somehow scraped somewhat of an episode 2 together, which was leagues better, but the lack of consistency, me catching onto Grape scamming me, and coming to the terms that this wasn't going to get done with the team kind of brought everything to a halt. Eventually, I managed to get in touch with Apple herself, who told me about her side of the story and confirmed my suspicions. I still have all of the PayPal receipts of all the money I transferred over the 2 years, and it killed me to look at them. Happening at the same time was when my wife got pregnant, and our group of friends, the anime club, or whatever we used to call ourselves, Akidiras, Joey the Anime Man, and Lost Paws, kind of all split apart. I had lost thousands of dollars on a lifelong passion project, lost my friends, and this weird stigma that I was robbing people slowly canceled my channel. Killed my views and me at the same time inside. And that's when I mentally started to spiral down. It's all my fault. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't experienced enough. I should have used Kickstarter, not Patreon. I should have worked with real people in a studio, not over the internet. What if I had done this like that? What if I had done this like this? Why don't people watch my videos anymore? Was I the Ringo Starr of our anime Beatle group, and now that everyone was solo, no one went to Ringo's concert? Was it because I had a kid and I wasn't pumping video 24/7? Was it the algorithm, the demonetization? Was it out of spite people didn't like my content anymore? My brain was on overdrive at all time. Until I had my breaking point at Anime Expo 2018 last year. Every year I would get invited to conventions. It was the usual. I would go to about 5 or 6 a year. I would meet fans. I used to love doing that. AX was always the biggest, and it was the yearly gathering where all the YouTubers would hang together. That summer, in 2019, in Anime Expo, the biggest North American convention with over 100,000 of people, I had one signing throughout the whole event, and no one showed up. And it crushed me. I broke down crying and sobbing in a hall away from the crowd. Aki and Connor came to me to try and cheer me up, but at this point it was months worth of repressed sadness, anxiety, stress, and burnout overspilling all at once. Me wanting to provide for my family doing this job that I love so much, wanting my career to not blow up in flames, the loss of my friendship with everyone that was beyond my personal decision, where we could barely be seen together without creating a chaos of where's the other one? So at that point, they'd rather avoid doing collabs altogether to not deal with this backlash. My friend Aki, Joey, and Noble were thriving, and I was genuinely happy for them, but a part of me hated it. I've had mentored them and helped them bloom into successful YouTubers. And sure, there was absolutely reciprocity in there. They would help me too. But why was I the only one casted to the shadows while they could keep going on like nothing ever happened? I became resentful and bitter inside, so I started going to therapy, and I like to think I'm much better now. I've never stopped enjoying making videos, and while I may not still be getting the number of views I used to, I've came to terms with it. I've been tying my worth as a person to my success, and when it all crumbled, my self-worth went along with it. It really sucks for Kates. I'm sorry I couldn't deliver on the promises I made. I'm sorry if you hated me, because I assure you, the hardest critic of all was always myself. So where does that lead me off in regards to everything? Well, since then I've built the skeleton for a brand new opening, but I don't ever see it being more than that, just a one-shot opening, if it ever gets finished, that is. As much as I always believe in Kates on a story point of view, you just don't get a do-over on a project of this magnitude. What's my other option at this point? Well, either a webtoon kind of comics / manga if I can ever partner up with someone serious and reliable that can draw consistently on my behalf, or my other idea was to make some kind of live 2D visual novel, but as a YouTube video. I don't know, I think it can work in my head, but in both cases I'm outside my skill range, and people like me don't usually get second chances. I'm not making this video for sympathy or clearing my name. If I wanted to do that, I'd have done it years ago. Now, I wanted this to be a new beginning for my channel. If you came for anime recommendation, and the guy behind the infinite anime wisdom and countless bad jokes, he's back in full force and finally decided to move on to a new chapter in my life. But I had to shed this weight behind to accept the new hand that was dealt to me and realize I may never go back to that period of prosperity that 2016 era was. So what's in store for this channel? Well, first of all, my daughters are much better now. They were always kind of sick as babies, but now that they're starting to be more self-sufficient, it's going much smoother. Skyla still don't do her nights, but we've gotten used to it. So now it gives me more time to dedicate this channel of mine that I got going on. There's a lot of new ideas I want to try out, but if anything, just more content in general. Going back to weekly top 10s on Fridays, some kind of anime related news show on Mondays, live streaming on Tuesday and Thursday, either game related or stuff like Anime of the Week or Guess the Anime Live. And a random video in the middle of the week with more collabs with people, old ones or new ones, and just hopefully a better pace all around. I may never be able to bring back the Beatles, the anime Beatles, but maybe we can make something different together, and I hope you'll want to be a part of it. I don't usually make these update videos, but this was severely overdue. Truth be told, I've been scared of criticism and backlash my entire life. I don't deal well with drama. It makes me wince physically. I've always wanted to make people happy, even if it's just a little bit. So yeah, TLDR, hindsight is 2020. I'm sorry, I didn't live up to expectations, either yours or honestly simply my own expectations. I wanted it so bad, and I clearly didn't have the knowledge nor the experience to tackle such a big endeavor. But if anything, I think I've learned and grown as a person thanks to it. Thank you for still giving me a chance. I hope how little it was, it still brought you excitement or inspiration. I'm clearly not perfect, and fame kind of put on a spotlight that I never thought I deserved. Fame showcase your flaws through a magnifying glasses, so whenever you step slightly outside of bound, you get a lot of backlash for it. I've just always been a guy passionate about creating, and I think that's my biggest and also hardest downfall. I do own up to the mistakes I've made, and I learn from them. And to the risk of quoting endgames, I hope you don't judge me for my worst mistakes, and that in the end, the good I've brought outweighed the bad one. Anyway, enough with that self-pity bullshit. If you got recommendation of something you'd like or would like me to do, a collab with a certain YouTuber, a top 10 topic I've never covered, or that I covered or has been eaten up by copyrights, more chibi skits. Remember the chibis with the piano wars? Only the OG remember that cringe. More Guess the Anime, more Anime of the Week. Let it all out in the comments below. I really appreciate your support throughout all of those years. I truly wouldn't be who I am without you all. So, thank you. And let's get it done! Woo!